Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions, the mystery of the Zodiac 340 cipher, the code that took 51 years to crack. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. On November 8, 1969, the Zodiac Killer mailed a 340-character cipher to the San Francisco Chronicle, and the best cryptographers in America could not crack it for 51 years. His first cipher, the Z408, had fallen within a week to a schoolteacher, but the Z340 was different. It defeated the FBI, NSA consultants, professional codebreakers, and thousands of amateur cryptologists who studied it across 5 decades. The cipher sat in plain sight, published in newspapers, debated in online forums, loaded into every known code-breaking program. Nothing worked. Then, in late 2020, a software developer in Virginia named David Oranchak began working with a Belgian computer scientist and an Australian mathematician. Together, they identified the missing key. The Z340 was not read left to right. It used a diagonal transposition. Symbols had to be read in a specific diagonal pattern across the grid before the underlying substitution cipher could be applied. On December 5, 2020, the message finally gave up its secret, but the decoded text was not a confession. It was not a name. The Zodiac taunted investigators even in solution. "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me." His identity was never established. 2 more Zodiac ciphers, the Z13 and Z32, remain completely unsolved. What do they say? This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the world of history's most enduring unsolved crimes, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Every unsolved crime is a failure, not just of the investigation, but of memory itself. The witness, who might have placed the suspect at the scene, has died. The physical evidence has degraded or been lost in a storage room. The lead detective retired 30 years ago. The files exist, but the institutional knowledge that made them legible is gone. Cold cases are, in a very literal sense, history events that have receded from the living present into the documentary past, accessible now only through records, artifacts, and the unreliable memories of survivors. And yet cold cases do get solved. The history of forensic science is partly a history of cold case resolution. Cases that sat dormant for decades until a new technology, DNA profiling, digital facial recognition, isotope ratio analysis, genealogical databases, provided the key that previous generations lacked. The Golden State Killer was identified 50 years after his first known crime by genealogical DNA matching. Multiple historic murders have been solved through mitochondrial DNA extracted from hair samples thought to be too old and degraded to yield any useful information. The past is not as sealed as it seems. What cold cases teach us about crime is often as important as solving them. They expose the limitations of investigative practice at their time, the tunnel vision that focused on the wrong suspect, the forensic contamination that destroyed evidence, the jurisdictional rivalry that prevented agencies from sharing information. Examining cold cases is an act of institutional self-examination, an attempt to learn, across decades, from the failures that allowed the perpetrator to walk free. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Zodiac 340 cipher, the code that took 51 years to crack, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The Z1340 cipher was mailed to the San Francisco Chronicle on November 8, 1969, alongside a taunting letter to police. The Zodiac had already sent the Z408 cipher in August 1969, which schoolteacher Donald Hardin and his wife, Betty, solved within a week. The Z340 used a completely different arrangement and defeated professional cryptographers, FBI analysts, and thousands of amateur codebreakers who studied it over the following 5 decades. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the Z408 cipher, sent in 3 parts to 3 San Francisco Bay Area newspapers in August 1969, was a homophonic substitution cipher where symbols replaced letters. Donald and Betty Hardin of Salinas solved it in under a week. The decoded message began, "I like killing people because it is so much fun." The Z408 solution confirmed the Zodiac was the cipher's author, but revealed nothing about his identity, age, location, or occupation. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. The Z340 defeated 51 years of analysis because it used 2 cipher layers rather than 1. Standard code-breaking approaches, frequency analysis, digraph analysis, known plain text attacks, all failed because they assumed a single substitution layer. The transposition component scrambled the ciphertext arrangement before the substitution was applied, making frequency patterns unrecognizable, and every single-layer solution attempt yield only noise. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, on December 5, 2020, David Oranchak, a software developer from Virginia, Sam Blake, an Australian mathematician, and Jarl van Eyck, a Belgian software developer, announced the Z340's solution. The key was a specific diagonal columnar transposition, reading symbols in a precise diagonal pattern across the cipher grid before applying the substitution table produced coherent English text. The solution was reached using both cryptographic insight and modern computational search tools that had not existed for most of the cipher's unsolved history. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the decoded Z340 message reads, "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me that wasn't me on the TV show." The FBI officially confirmed the solution on December 11, 2020. The message is consistent with the Zodiac's established taunting style and confirms the cipher was genuine and not a deliberate nonsense string. It contains no confession, no name, and no location that could advance the identification of the killer. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: Arthur Lee Allen, the primary suspect named by Robert Graysmith in his 1986 book Zodiac and by David Fincher's 2007 film, was conclusively excluded. DNA collected from his remains after his 1992 death did not match the genetic material recovered from Zodiac letter stamps and envelope flaps. His fingerprints also did not match. The Z13 cipher, just 13 characters, and the Z32 remain entirely unsolved. The Zodiac's true identity has never been officially established by any law enforcement agency. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Zodiac 340 cipher, the code that took 51 years to crack. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the Z340 was solved by diagonal columnar transposition combined with substitution. This is the confirmed solution, not a hypothesis. Oranchak, Blake, and Van Eyck's methodology is published in full at Zodiac Killer site. Com and was independently verified before the FBI confirmation. The specific diagonal reading pattern, combined with the standard Zodiac symbol substitution table, produces unambiguous English text consistent in style with all other confirmed Zodiac communications. No credible competing solution has been proposed since the December 2020 FBI confirmation. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the Z13 cipher, just 13 characters long, may encode the Zodiac's real name, a location, or maybe a deliberate dummy message with no decodable content. Its extreme brevity makes statistical analysis nearly impossible. 13 characters provide insufficient frequency data to identify any cipher system. Without a crib, a known fragment of plain text, there is no mathematical leverage. Some analysts argue the Zodiac deliberately made it unsolvable. Others believe a name is encoded there, and the Z13 remains the most consequential unsolved fragment in the entire case. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that Arthur Lee Allen, named by Robert Graysmith as the prime suspect and popularized by Fincher's film, was scientifically excluded. DNA and fingerprints did not match. In 2021, the codebreakers, a volunteer investigative group named Gary Francis Post, a deceased U.S. Air Force veteran, as the Zodiac, claiming to find anagram evidence in the ciphers. No law enforcement agency confirmed this identification, and investigators noted the methodology was not peer-reviewed. The suspect list officially remains open at the San Francisco Police Department. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Zodiac 340 cipher, the code that took 51 years to crack, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes: the FBI officially confirmed the Z340 solution on December 11, 2020, releasing a public statement acknowledging Oranchak, Blake, and Van Eyck's work. The methodology was independently verified before the announcement and published in full at Zodiac Killer site. The diagonal transposition key, combined with the substitution cipher table, produces consistent readable English. This was the most significant development in the Zodiac case in 50 years and was acknowledged by the San Francisco Police Department as a genuine breakthrough. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented Allen's DNA was collected from his belongings and body after his 1992 death. Testing by the San Francisco Police Department showed no match to the partial male DNA profile extracted from stamps and envelope flaps on Zodiac letters. His fingerprints also did not match prints recovered from correspondence. A 2023 analysis of genetic material from Zodiac letter stamps produced an improved partial male profile, but no database match to any known suspect has been found. The search against law enforcement DNA databases continues. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the Z408 and Z340 share the same underlying symbol alphabet, confirming a single author for both. The Z340 adds a transposition layer that randomizes ciphertext order before substitution is applied. This two-layer architecture explains why 51 years of single-layer analysis produced nothing. The Z13 uses a shorter, partially overlapping symbol set, whose relationship to the Z340 system is not established. Whether a transposition layer is also present in Z13 cannot be determined from 13 characters alone. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Zodiac 340 cipher, the code that took 51 years to crack. Now, we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Z340 solution in December 2020 was the largest cryptographic breakthrough in the Zodiac case since 1969. The San Francisco Police Department's Zodiac case remains officially open. The casebreakers named Gary Francis Post in 2021. No law enforcement agency confirmed this. David Fincher's 2007 film Zodiac remains the definitive cinematic account of the investigation. Oranchak's team documented their full methodology at Zodiac Killer site, making all work open to public verification. The Z13 and Z32 continue to attract serious cryptographic attention. The 2023 DNA analysis produced a partial profile that remains unmatched. The Zodiac is definitively connected to 5 confirmed murders and is suspected in several others. His identity remains one of the most famous unsolved questions in American criminal history. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Zodiac 340 cipher, the code that took 51 years to crack, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Zodiac Killer ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle, it is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.